Hello, everybody. I decided to start taking a look at psionics in D&D and some related games and other role-playing games. And the first instance of psionics I know about in D&D is the Strategic Review in 1975, in which the Mind Flayer was introduced. That lovely cephalopod that likes to suck brains. Now, the intelligence of the opponent is what determines the player's save against this attack. And we get a first view of the Mind Blast and what it can do, the side effects if you fail to stop your brain getting sucked and blasted. And you can see that, you know, nothing's an automatic. And everybody can fight back at this point in the game. And which is a feature I like, but it's much more like a feat. The creature has this ability, and here's what you do to see if it works and to see if the players are successful. And you can see that certain classes get little perks, or certain magical items they might have on give them perks. So that is our first look at the Mind Flayer and psionics. Then fast forward to the Eldritch Wizardry. And that book was put out in, when was that? 1976, I do believe. Yep, 1976. And again, we have the Mind Blast. But if you'll note, we now have points involved, psionic points, which are covered in this book, and we will be going over. And we're going to actually make a psionic person next episode. And then we get to 1979, I do believe off the top of my head, and we have the Monster Manual. Unfortunately, some of my original stuff was destroyed, so I've had to buy the reprints and things like that. But we can, the information's still good. So as you can see, we have a point system. We have additional abilities now outlined, a little more information and description, some pictures. But this is the beginning of the psionics in D&D. It was the Mind Flayer. And I also want to take a look at Metamorphosis Alpha and Gamma World system as well, and then we'll move on to some other one. Okay, so here's what I was thinking. It's so weird filming yourself. Oh wow, this must have got my shirt dirty. So psionics. We got the reprint here of Eldritch Wizardry. And the reason I start with the Mind Flayer, like I said, is the first psionic anything I had any exposure to in role-playing game. But the Psionic Rules changed, as I pointed out as we were going through, looking just at that monster, just through a few years, really. And at the same time, other rules were developed in Metamorphosis Alpha and in Gamma World. And I wanted to take a look at psionics because I think psionics gets a very, very bad rap. And I don't understand why. And part of the reason I don't understand why is, one, when I was a kid in the 70s. I was a kid. Don't get me wrong. I wasn't like an adult playing D&D. I was a kid. We mixed all kinds of stuff up. I mean, you seen the meme with the character on the dinosaurs. I don't know. They got a gun. They're shooting lasers. Whatever. It's all crazy. And it says, if this isn't happening, you're doing it wrong. And to an extent, that's kind of true. I mean, they're role-playing games. You should be able to probably do some crazy stuff in them. They're fantasies, even the sci-fi end of the scale. Like Traveler. Traveler was the hardest sci-fi game I remember at the time. And as far as being a role-playing game, like you could try to create your character and you'd be dead before you got done creating them. So I have not replaced Traveler yet. So you're going to see a lot of reprint material or stuff I had to get from other people, or they Xerox for me or whatever, because or they scanned it and sent it to me, or I was able to find a PDF to buy, or stuff like that, because we had a disaster and a lot of original stuff was destroyed. Anything I could replace, I have. Some stuff's too expensive to replace, to be quite honest. It's just, can't do it. And then there's even some things around here that I got that WotC is never, Wizard of the Coast, who owns the IP on a lot of these titles, from TSR owned, is never going to reprint. So, makes it harder to get, definitely harder to find. And there's reasons for that. I mean, I'm not ragging on Wizard of the Coast, because I understand. Like Warriors of Mars, TSR got sued over, so they can't reprint it. But it's interesting to look at mechanically. There's no psionics in there, which is bizarre to me, because there's psionics like in Edgar Rice Burroughs' works, but I couldn't find any psionics in that old TSR game. I went and looked today. So what I want to do is kind of trip down memory lane and look at the Psionic systems and look how they're different. Like Ardoon and the early D&D stuff uses points systems, but how they mechanically work appears to be differently. So the goal is we're going to make some characters. We're going to try to keep the character having as near as similar or glass stats for each system, and show how the psionics work with our human X. Going to be our little experiment guy. And we will go over all the rules on how each of these work. But as a kid, we did everything. And one of the reasons I find it confusing is right now, where I live, you can go to a psychic fair, or used to, before the Great Lockdown. I'm sure they probably started it back up. And so you can go to the psychic fair, and at the psychic fair, you will experience the whole range of magic that you experience in D&D. They will have people there, doing prayers, doing angels. So that's more your divine magic, like you have in D&D. And they will have people there with candles. Buy your candle, fix your financial problem. Come let me read your palms and tell you the future. Which would be more of your, that's more of what people think when they think of wizards and stuff like that. I mean, of course, fantasy stuff is way over the top, but, you can see the components that would be available, if you had a world that functioned on magic. And then at the same time, you got people doing Reiki or just channeling the spirit of somebody. And that puts you into or they say they're empathic or whatever. That puts you into the psychic realm. And so all three are there, like in real life. And you graduate in California, land of the People's Republic, and yeah, we're kind of out there at times. But I know it's not unique to California. There are other places in the United States you can experience this. So if that's happening in real life, why would it be difficult for it to happen in a fantasy setting? And somehow, from when I was a kid, it gradually developed to like, you just don't do. No, we do not do psionics in D&D. Only monsters get psionics. And characters do not do that. We do not mix. And then, and I can understand in some sci-fi settings why it might not be like the thing. But right now, in the other room, my husband's watching old Star Trek. And it is the one with the Jack the Ripper. And you had the lady on who was empathic, who gets murdered, and Scotty's the one getting framed for the murder. And she can feel the presence and all that. And she names off its names from all these different planets. because she's empathic. She's a little bit telepathic. So she can pick up on all that stuff. So, right there. Excuse me. I am still getting over a cold. Classic theatrical sci-fi. You know, I know it's not 100% physics correct. But we've all seen, you know, Spock do the, you know, up against the wall, and he's, you know, and they got the alien, his put on the woo-woo, and he's getting the guard, and you see the guard trying to fight it, but the guard always succumbs, and Captain Kirk and Spock escape, you know. But so that is, so it's there. And it's there to be as subtle as you want for your setting, or not at all. But I'm not sure totally why Psionics has always been in this weird spot in fantasy and even in sci-fi games. Because you got techno mages in the Babylon 5 universe and the Psychor. And techno mages were clearly not the same as the Psychor. They were doing something else. Oh my goodness, this cold's getting to me. Let me take a sip of water here. So I don't kind of totally get how that happened. Other than it's quite possible that when they moved from, like I pointed out, like the first Mind Flayer was more like, it's just got this power. And here's what it's called, and here's what it does. And if you don't succeed in your save, you know, this is what happens to you. If you do, depending on how badly you fail, a little chart down there, you know, and that was easy to understand. And then they went to this point system, and it's a little complicated. And then they changed it, made it better. We will decide if it's better or not. We're actually going to do something with all of them that I have, all the rules I have. I have some third-party rules, too, from back then that we'll look at as well. And and then you had to have 2 books when they changed it the next time, and then they changed it again, and they put out updates to that. So I'll do my best to go over all of this as we cruise along. But it seems like people just didn't like it. And now I remember a lot of my original stuff got destroyed in disaster, so I got what I got. But I remember at some point when I was a kid, we got Gamma World, and Metamorphosis Alpha was out. Somebody had that. And I had Gamma World. Somebody else had Metamorphosis Alpha. And I have Metamorphosis Alpha's old rules now. I need to replace Gamma World still, but I have, I paid for a PDF somewhere. So I remember that when we saw those and we knew how the Mind Flayer used to be done, even though we all had the monster manual by then, it was just easier to treat all that stuff like Gamma World. I just remember that's what we did. So if we had Psionics, we just somehow glossed it and converted it to like Gamma World. And then we had our D&D characters deal with it that way. So I don't know if that was like normal for a lot of people or if they just didn't even try. But we're going to do it. And one of the reasons too is like, even if they have the same, if they have point systems, like Ardoon has a point system for their psychic class, D&D has this point system. But when you go look at the mechanics, it's different. How those points are used, what they mean, what the rules are involved. And so I thought it would be interesting. I do not have Legacy's rules, so I really don't know how Ardoon Legacy works at all. I only have old Ardoon. And but if you want to see how this kind of came about, go see Shadow and Son's channel. There's like 2 live streams. Well, the first one's on fantasy. The second one's on sci-fi. I'm in the sci-fi one. But, you know, I grew up in the 70s. Pyramid power, enhancing your psychic ability, crystals. And, you know, I've got some old books from the 70s around here. Tell you they're a hoot. Totally gold mines for role-playing game stuff. So, you know, maybe I can dig them out and come up with some stuff and show you guys some really creative stuff you can do. But you should be able to have this stuff. Because if I can have it in real life, if I can go to a fair and see it in real life, and that includes most people probably, there's some people, I don't know, they might have a gift. And then there's other people, they could just be frauds. They just want your money, you know. It's just a red candle. They put some symbols on it. And there, yeah. Give me your money, yeah. It may be that you should be able to have that in a fantasy setting where you have your legit psychic, your legit arcane magic caster, your legit, you know, priest guy. And then you should have some frauds roaming around. You really should, because that's what happens in real life, right? Cult leaders that they're not any of the legit things. They're just pretending. And when you see things like Farscape and Star Trek and Star Wars, I mean, come on, you got psychic stuff going on all over the place. The levels are different. How in Babylon 5, you know, so when you think about those TV shows, at Firefly, and movies, there's movies out there as well, and books, there's books, future, and people are psionic, and they're psionically, you know, investigating crimes and stuff. If you want to have that, you should be able to do that. And like I said, I've got a bunch of different games here. I'm just starting with 2 of the older games. That's D&D and Arduin. But then I'm sure we'll branch out to the others that I've got around here. And like I said, I've got third party for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons as well, Psionics books and things like that. So, you know, fun to take a look at how they're different. And yeah, we should also look at what they did in 5e. I mean, there's a lot of videos what they did on 5e. I just know when I was doing the 5e stuff, deeming that I wasn't, the psionics just still, what they're doing doesn't work for me. I did find one thing I started to like, had the system, how it was working, and then they made some changes, and I'm like, no, this isn't going to work now. And look at some options there too. Eventually, if we get there, I got 4E. I'm pretty too, because nobody wanted the books at a game store. And when after 5E came out, and Game Store gave me their stock. I missed 4E pretty much. I think I played one game with somebody. I didn't have the books, and I got like a whole bunch of 4E books, which I've poked at and looked at over, and I'm like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. I see why people may have had problems with it and stuff, or why people really liked it. And there's some good stuff, and it's not all bad. We should have 3 here somewhere too. I don't know if I have 3.5 though. I should have 2 rules. We'll take a look at it. Maybe we'll first start off with Human X getting attacked by the old school Mind Flayer. And he has no psychic powers whatsoever. And then we'll go from there. But that's my thought. Start a series on the misunderstood, often groaned over psychic stuff, but, you know, it can add some flavor to your game. And it's an option, too, for some unusual characters, and some role-playing that I think gets missed a lot currently in both fantasy and the sci-fi type settings. To me, it's all the same. It's all a big fantasia, whether you're doing it with rockets or without rockets or with both at the same time. Arduin, I'm going to tell you right now, there was spaceships flying around, coming and visiting the planet and whatnot. There was no problem with that, crashing there, whatever. Original sandbox for D&D, old school, before Greyhawk became a setting and Blackmore became a setting, when they were like kingdoms in the same big sandbox. That original sandbox planet had spaceships crashing on it from Star Empires. And there's actually a weapon in Star Empires that, when deployed, destroys regular physics for that planet, plunges it into. The only thing that works really is magic. And so that's the thing. And I was told that there's another game David Hargrove made that has a similar device in it too, certain technological level. I don't have that game yet, but now I need it. There's a bunch of games I need, actually, from different eras. But, only got so much money. I'm going to budget like everybody else. So anyway, that's the plan. Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you made it this far, the brave few. Subscribe if you're new to the channel. You know where to push everything. No, I'm not a whiz with YouTube stuff at all. And, channel, you're going to get what you're going to get from Grandma. Yeah, it might be Taekwondo one day. It might be our RPG. It might be scientific experiment, or it might be chickens, or dogs or something. So whatever I'm doing. But there will definitely probably always be more RPG stuff. Besides, I got lots of things I want to do. All the World Monsters, Dragon Press materials, roll aids. For those of you who remember roll aids, John Carter, Mars. Take a look at games you can never really get. There's never going to be anything more for them, like Warriors of Mars. TSR got sued. But it's kind of interesting how they did it. I just got to figure out how to film it better, because I don't know, I'll have to get a whiteboard or something. But thank you for watching. Have a great Sunday, everybody. Take care.